Alrighty, welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. Today, I am so excited to bring you my friend, Dr. Alan Chong. Hello and welcome, Alan.
Thanks for having me, Heather. Pleasure.
Yeah, so great to have you here. So for those listening, Dr. Alan Chong is a practicing chiropractor, right? He's based up in Calgary in Canada, so he's practically my neighbor. Forever an entrepreneur, Dr. Alan Chong is also known as the spine doctor. He is a spine expert with over 33 years in clinical practice as a chiropractor. His living legacy is in coaching chiropractors and alternative healthcare business owners to thrive and achieve business success through his heart-centered coaching approach to mastery, mentoring, and masterminds. His other passions are gourmet cooking, wine, and photography, which I can personally attest to since I follow him on Instagram. So I get to see all the pictures of things that he's cooking and the wine that he's drinking. And the other fun part is Alan and I, our paths crossed, and I'm trying to think now, Alan, what year it was, right? But we were in a mastermind.
About 5 years ago.
5 years ago, yeah, in a mastermind together, which lasted for a time, but I can say that I always found you to be one of the true blue folks that showed up every time without fail, served from your heart, gave very willingly to the other participants. So I really appreciate you. I'm glad to have you here today. I'm excited to chat with you about life and business.
For sure. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. And I look forward to getting down into some gritty stuff, some gutsy stuff, and some great business because, being in practice that long is one thing. And of course, I own my practices as well as run businesses and have done other businesses, so-called on the side as well. But since I was a teenager, I would say I was an entrepreneur. Just didn't know the name entrepreneur way back then. Right. But I always knew that there was something inside of me that could do more, make more, and just make life better.
Oh, I love that. Well, and I love to find out, where the entrepreneurial path starts for people. So we'll dig into that in a moment. Let's hit pause, Alan. I've got an editor who will help edit this out. I'm
Sure.
curious if you move your mic just a little bit closer. See how mine is right in front of me?
Right.
Are you able to scoot it? I just think it'll help cut down on the echo.
So there is a bit of echo, is there?
Yeah, so that we hear it first in the mic. That's much better. So if you can
just better now?
Yeah, pull that in close.
Okay.
Does that work for you? I don't want you to be uncomfortable.
I can even have it right here. Is that good?
That's a lot better. That's perfect.
Okay, yeah, because it's the type, I should know better. It's the type of mic. It just focuses right here.
Perfect. That sounds so much better. Okay, awesome. So,
do you want to do that first part? I don't talk very much in that anyway.
You don't. So I will just say, and he can edit back over. Welcome, Alan. I am so excited to have you here on my podcast.
Thank you very much, Heather. It's a pleasure, really.
Well, I know our paths have crossed for a while now. You and I go back to the days of being in a mastermind group together. But for people that don't know you, talk to us. I always like to ask folks where your entrepreneurial journey started. Because you own your own practice, you've helped lead multiple businesses, you coach other people on businesses. How did you get into entrepreneurship?
Well, in my bio, I do describe myself as forever an entrepreneur. And I think back to when I was a kid, it's the creative side of me that didn't apply myself to business. I didn't own a lemonade stand, but I thought of the idea that would be great, but you don't make enough money at a lemonade stand. So I still remember one of the things that inspired me is opportunity. I was a dishwasher in a restaurant for one day, and that's plenty too much, because the next day I got the real job that I wanted, and that was a job, but it inspired me to do more. And that very quickly, that job was at a supermarket packing bags, and it was a small town in British Columbia. I busted my butt, as everybody there, it was the company culture. And then I realized, even though I was making probably the top wage is about almost 4 times. This was in high school. The last year of high school, I was making 4 times minimum wage, but only 10 hours a week. So I thought, well, I learned the concept of leverage, because making a high wage is leverage. You think about it. So if you're paying a high wage to someone, you're also leveraging, betting on, and hopefully getting the results that they are producing a lot more for the time that you're paying them. So there's two concepts there. So I realized, what if I work for myself? So I always knew that I was going to work for myself and try to create those situations. But there's nothing wrong with being an employee, but think leveraging your time with other things perhaps, or other businesses, and there's certainly other people.
No, I love that. And I think that I agree. The concept of entrepreneurship can absolutely be applied even in a position of employment. I look at my sister, who actually I interviewed last week, which is going to be super fun. She is truly an expert at sales. She gets people, she reads people very well. She's really skilled in sales, but she has approached her own path within Siemens, which is a medical supply company, very much from the standpoint of an entrepreneur. Like, how can I do this differently? How can I show up in a bigger way? How can I like blow through my sales goals? How can I, and she gets asked to do like a lot of trainings and presentations and other things. And it's been really fun to watch her treat her job like she is an owner of her own business opportunity.
And that's a curious point. That's a great story, Heather, that if you're an employee and you as an employer, I love those employees that embrace the business as if it were their own.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what the company culture that I coach and teach is, to try to create that situation, try to hire people that are inspired. So not just for the wage. And there's got to be more to it in it for them than the wage. And in that sense, if you can get employees and or associates working as if it's their own business, you've scored a big one right there.
Yeah, well, I agree. And from your perspective as somebody who has employed people over the years, is there a trick to doing that? How do you find those people that are going to treat?
Well, it is, believe me, just when I think I nailed the hiring process, I haven't, because just when you think, for you business owners out there, just when you think you've got the ideal team, watch out, because it's that cruise control that seems to crash.
Yeah.
And it's not a rule, but it is something to take heed, that because people need to move on. People have bigger, different goals than I want for them. And let's face it, people are changing jobs and careers many times in their lives these days, because there's so much opportunity there. So to answer the question, I would say the number one thing is be very specific in your advertising. In other words, be very specific in who you want, what hours you want them to work, and put it out there, as opposed to this mystery job posting that you get millions of applications, but most of them are not good candidates. So that's something I learned of a few years back, but it took me quite a few years in business to learn that. And I'm not the perfect HR person, but as the proprietor, the owner, the principal, and the bottle washer, I still like to be very involved in the hiring process.
Right. Well, and we all pick up, whether we're an expert in something or not, we all pick things up along the way in our journeys that can relate to different areas. And I really like your idea of clarity in the job posting itself. I remember reading somewhere actually on how to hire people. I managed a team of 15 attorneys, paralegals, and staff last year on a massive project. And I had to hire a few people onto that project. And I was trying to read up on like how you really get the right person. We didn't have the luxury of a lot of time or a large market to choose from. So we had some constraints, but I remember reading about companies that were really creative in how they posted advertisements for positions that would appeal to a very particular kind of person, right? And tailoring it exactly to who they wanted. So I love that. I think having clarity and putting it out there is really a great point. So in your 33 years of practicing, building businesses, right? What are some of the things that you look back on now knowing what you know? Are there things that you look back on that you go, maybe I could have done that differently?
Oh, tons of things, but let's talk about the big ones.
Yeah.
Um, I would say that practice and owning a business, and I'll talk about practice not so much from the clinical standpoint. I am um, a spine doctor, and it was through going through a branding exercise that I realized that I need to brand myself in a world that seems very either mixed up or uniform, speaking of the chiropractic profession. So why
Mm,
be confused with just the everyday chiropractor? Stand out. So I went through a process of specializing in what I know and getting really good at it, and then branding the spine doctor for that reason. But really, that is my decompression, spinal decompression part of my business, which essentially I have 2 locations and 3 practices. My specialty practice is where I see some of the most difficult cases in
mm,
all of this whole region. And in fact, I get fly-in clients and consultations that are requested from not all over Canada, but certainly parts of Western Canada. So that if you are in that position where you're branding and you're getting higher demand from people outside your region, you know you're doing the right thing. It's
mm,
when you blend in with everybody else, that's when you've got to step out. And I made that decision just over 12 years ago, purchased some very specialized equipment, did extra training, and got really good at my spinal exams, and established a reputation for that.
mm.
I still run general practice, so it's just a nice way to I can't say specialize because it's not a true specialty,
Yeah.
but to niche
Creative
market.
focus. Yeah,
Exactly.
focus.
And what it turns out is that part of the business actually probably does 1/3 of all my revenues now. So,
Wow.
and time spent, I don't have to spend 1/3 of my time and
Yeah.
effort
Yeah,
earning that
absolutely.
extra. So it is, again, leverage.
Yep. Oh, I love that. I'm gonna hit pause. So we have crazy schedules today. My husband was home. He put Henley down and left. She's screaming in her bedroom right now.
All right,
I'm
no
gonna,
worries. I'm flexible for my time
okay.
if you are.
I'm just gonna hit pause. If you give
Sure.
me a second, we'll pause
Yeah.
this recording so David doesn't have to
Sure.
take a big clip out, and
Yeah.
I'll be right. Well, I appreciate what you say so much about having a focus, Alan. One of the things that I actually got coaching on really early on, around the time when you and I met in that mastermind, was the importance of being so targeted and really creating a niche and having a focus. So I think that's a really, really powerful point. What else, when you observe your path looking backwards, what else, does anything else come to mind about what you would have done differently?
Oh, lots of things do. I'm always baffled by those people interviewed, famous people that say I wouldn't have done anything different. Well, I would have done many, many things differently. Come on, seriously. So number 2, I would say, was I would have thrown away a lot less money.
Mm,
Because, and let me clarify that, because as in fact, as I was, about the time we met, I was actively pursuing a brand I called the Spine Coach at the time, and had grandiose visions of being able to coach many people on an online format or even on a self-serve format where they could get advice about their spine and chiropractic and posture and all that stuff. Well, that's very money intensive, technology intensive. And time intensive. So I threw a lot of money away. And think about this as you listeners, where you've, after the fact, you realize I was just trying to put out fires. And that is
Mm.
not a nice feeling and a good place to either put out fires or say, I need this done yesterday, because you weren't either planned properly or organized enough. And those are usually the weak areas to just do it in a more efficient and effective way, not using your own time necessarily, but planning a team to make that happen, as opposed to, oh, did you know you needed this? Oh, that's going to be another 5,000. Oh, and by the way, you could have this, and then be, of course, subject to being upsold, right? So that's one of the things that I would have definitely done differently, is to plan better and had a vision that included options for where I would spend. And then, of course, when times are good in business, it's really tempting just to buy this or buy that technology. Or if in a business sense, business decisions should be spending, whether it be advertising, it needs to have a predictable and measurable advancing of your business, or else why do it? This brand advertising, you better have a lot of money sitting there just to get brand recognition, because people switch brands just like that these days.
Right, right. No, that's, I mean, I can see how that can be a painful lesson. And I think, I mean, part of it, and I'll play devil's advocate here, part of it is, I think, the experience of trying to build a business. And not that everybody ends up wasting money, but I think most people do somewhere along the line. I think
Sure.
that's part of the lesson of building a business, right? Is that we don't yet have the experience of knowing what's going to work, and so we try some things, and inevitably some of those things don't work. Hiring the wrong business coach, or hiring, like I had a painful experience of hiring a tech team that totally absolutely did not deliver, and I paid them a bunch of money, right?
I've been there for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So it is.
So So on that note, there is a difference between being sold something
Mm,
and actually seeking out and sort of either getting it quoted or look at three comparables, et cetera, et cetera. And usually that's a time crunch. That's the thing. And if you're being sold on things all the time, you might have that personality that always seeks to buy stuff. So
mhm.
be careful in business that, I mean, you gotta have the guts to go for it in a sense, but you have to have the grit to say no to so-called opportunities. And that wisdom comes from experience, and learn from experiences to know when to say no.
Well, I love that. And I think it all still boils down to, the decisions that you are making. Are you doing it from the standpoint of leadership, of leading your business and having the plan, right? Because I think sometimes we just want to hand off portions. I mean, I can speak
Totally.
from personal experience around technology stuff. I was like, I just want this handled. I don't want to have to think about, I want to have to do it. But ultimately, we're still responsible for creating the path. We're still
Exactly.
responsible for making the decisions about what we need and what it needs to do for us.
And for sure, Heather. So what I get from that is, um, be a leader, stay the leader, and don't give away your leadership where it's not supposed to be given away. In other words, a business company needs to have that leadership to continue on as an effective business. That leadership is essential, and for those who don't lead their ship, if you will, their company, that's when they get into trouble. So there's a difference between delegating, which is giving the trust over to someone who's competent and qualified to be delegated that duty, even if it's third party. And that's often where the efficiency is in third partying certain things, but always be in control of the content and the result. And that's the key, and make sure it's measurable. And that's where I think I made the mistakes and would do things over again and not throw away a lot of money in so-called investing in this or that, which had zero or negative payback.
Mm. Well, and there's so much that we could dig into there. I think for anybody that has built anything in their own business, they understand, especially the constraint of time. When you want something done tomorrow, right? There's a huge urge to outsource or make a decision that may not serve you well and may not actually be in alignment with your plan. Whereas a leader of a business who has a plan, has some of that structure built in, has a timeline, and is able to do things, much more. What's the word? In planned
Sequential,
sequentially, yes, in planned progression, not just, snap decisions around, oh, I need this, I needed it yesterday, and trying to like fill the gap.
right. But as an entrepreneur, be willing to have the vision and take some risk, and that's where I'm referring to the guts part, the
Mm,
guts to make some decisions based on whether it be a combination of intuition and I guess some research or some tangible things that it's not just a hunch.
right, right. Well, I want to change directions now because I know a huge part of who you are in your business, a huge part of your enjoyment around coaching others in business is the heart centered part of you, right? You have a lot of heart language, even in your talk, in some of your programs. I've observed you for a while, and I think you are launching or are just about on the verge of launching a podcast. And does it have something about heart or heart centered in it? Talk to us about that.
It definitely is heart centered, and I've actually had the heart for my living legacy is to teach others, especially chiropractors, to be more successful in the right ways. And that is, I'm launching a podcast. It's Practice Mastery for chiropractors and alternative healthcare practitioners. And the reason why specifically is because I see many younger practitioners floundering, trying to find their way, and again, spending a lot of money if they have it or access to it, either getting in a lot of debt, thinking that's going to create their success. But really I believe that most success comes from the heart, and the best kind of success comes deep from the heart. And the reason is because again, with many years of practice experience and owning the business and running the business, I can say that I've spent way too many hours in my head trying to solve a problem, and really the answer was there, that I either needed to turn back, or it was a decision that was hard to change but needs to be changed, um, and especially with employees. Directions, there's all kinds of examples of that. So Practice Mastery for chiropractors and alternative healthcare practitioners. Practice Mastery will be the podcast, and
Right.
it's launching at or near now soon. And if you're listening to this in the future, it probably is launched and will be available for healthcare practitioners, especially alternative and natural healthcare practitioners, with a specific audience more for chiropractors, because we seem to be a mainstream profession that is the most highly misunderstood profession out there right now in healthcare, and continues to be, and it frustrates me.
Interesting. So I have a question about that, but what really rang true for me and when you were talking about making decisions from the place of your head, right? Like analytical decisions versus really tuning into your heart is that your heart is really what gives you clarity. Is that one way to
Totally.
say it?
I would say the number one thing, listeners, is if you can't decide, and it's not an absolute, it's a really important decision, um, uh, and is not like life and death right then and there. Try to buy time to sleep on it.
Mm,
It's an amazing principle that sleeping on it often does give clarity, as opposed to thinking about it more and putting more down on paper, pros and cons. That's often a confusing place to be. But when you wake up, see what your heart tells you, because first thing in the morning is often when you have greater clarity. And for example,
Yes.
a couple of years ago, I adopted a practice because I needed more clarity of meditation. Just 10 minutes every morning, religiously, has given me a lot more clarity and calmness. Uh,
Oh,
so those are principles that you can apply and will work for you.
oh, I love that. And what you were talking about just now reminds me of a time in my life when I was doing the morning pages, right? So the Artist
Right.
Way, Julia Cameron. And she says in her Artist Way, which is really a way of, kind of releasing your thoughts and getting to the point and the clarity that you need, but doing it first thing in the morning upon waking, because your ego is not yet awake and interfering with everything. So
That's
that was
funny.
that was one way of putting it, but I thought, isn't that interesting? I think there is something magical about the morning, and I do love your feedback around sleeping on it and really just, letting the feeling and your gut instinct or your heart speak about what is true, and not trying to, be with your paper and your list and making decisions from an analytical pro con standpoint.
For sure. And that is a trick, if you will, a hack for getting into your heart, what your heart is actually feeling.
I love it. What are some of the other concepts that you cover in your coaching with people and people who are building either, chiropractic businesses or other businesses? What are some of the other topics that you cover?
Well, one of the first things I start with any coaching client is I get good at asking and getting them to define the five or maximum 10 most important things in their life. And I'm not talking about tangible like objects. I'm talking about the most important core value things that they want out of life, um, and want to create or be like, just what are the five most important things to you. And commonly, for example, are family. Well, if family is really important to you, then why do you spend so much time away in a on a speaking tour or whatever it may be, and you're barely with your family? So that's a core value mismatch. And so the first exercise is to get consistency and get congruent with one's core values. Of course, a coaching client, everybody needs to define what those values are before and put them down. That's a good example where you got to put it down on paper and see it. You wrote that yourself. This is what you said, and have a coach like me be the accountability to say, well, you said this and your actions certainly aren't consistent with that. And you're working 6-7 days a week and you say that family is the most important to you, or et cetera, et cetera. And what most people will discover, that money is usually not the top thing. Even though they're trying to advance their business, it's not the top number one thing, and I don't believe it should be. Heather, I can't hear you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay,
I love
so
Yeah, no, I love what you say about core values being the starting point of any of the coaching that you do, right? And going back to what really everybody should be looking at around any decisions. And like, I know from my own personal experience in life, so I got basically assigned a counselor in law school when my mom was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And they basically didn't give me a choice, right? They said, here's your counselor. This person worked for UW. And they just basically put me on a weekly schedule because I was trying to make my way through law school and also dealing with my mom's terminal illness. And it was one of the best gifts I could have been given in that time. But do you know that around so much of what we talked about during that period, and that has served me well the rest of my life, is what are your core values? And who can you be even during this really, really strenuous time that's in alignment with your core values, basically as a way to get through anything,
right. Well,
right?
I just got shivers there. That
Yes,
means it's positive.
Totally. And really, if you look at any disconnect that we're having in life, whether we're unhappy in a relationship, whether we're struggling with our children, whether it's something business related, if you go back, he ran me through a very specific core value exercise where in each, and I can't remember exactly, I'd have to go look at the worksheet how the areas are broken down, but it's 7, 8, 9, 10 areas across life. You rate yourself on a scale
Right.
from -3 to +3. Are you fulfilling? And your core values are described in an action, like in an action statement, right? So I
Hmm.
communicate openly and, regularly with my spouse or whatever. So you describe the thing that is the expression of your core value, and then you rate yourself from -3 to +3 on whether or not you're living that value. And if you have any
Totally. That's great.
disconnect or dip in life, in business, in parenting, you can go revisit your core value statement around that area. And almost certainly every time it's simply because you are not living in accordance with your core
Okay.
values.
Yeah. And I think business these days, especially, I get that younger people millennials are notoriously, it's all about me. It's all about my values, not yours. And, it's working within their structure, not necessarily the structure of what they've been placed upon. So, I mean,
Mm,
there are extremes of that. I think in general, that's a great place to start for everyone, and that's where I do start clients.
hmm Well, that's interesting. I mean, I want to talk really quickly about that reflection on millennials. So, I think as we look at millennials, there's a couple things that are fascinating. And having led a team of 15 people, several of whom fall into the millennial category, it was really interesting to compare their performance, the number of days that they were there on the job compared to everybody else. Like there were definitely some disconnects happening. And yet, the thing that I really appreciate about millennials, actually around this concept of values, is that they really behave differently in the marketplace than anybody ahead of them, like generations ahead of them, meaning that they're going to make buying decisions that are in alignment with their values. They are the ones that are way more likely to drive change when it comes to consumerism, because they're not interested in some of the trends and some of the flashy things. Like there's a lot that's happening within the millennial group as consumers, as a voice right now, that I think are really important to pay attention to, because
Totally.
they don't
Absolutely.
they don't feel bound to some of the strictures and the structures that existed ahead of them, right? Which
Yeah.
means that they also exercise their voice in really interesting and meaningful ways. So,
So to your audience, and to speak to that, I totally agree. And to be smart about it, it is a matter of, as a business owner, as a chiropractor, I have to define my marketing and my social media message when it is to the specific audience.
mm,
Obviously, millennials are part of our specific audience as a chiropractic clinic. So it is speaking a different language. And so whatever business you're in, listening to this, is to be not only mindful of it, but to respect that is a very important, powerful voice. That it is important, because even though that may not be your specific target market, if they're listening, they are part of your market, and they can
yes.
actually affect your business.
Yes. Well, and I think, and what I've heard and what I find to be true about millennials is that if you can speak to their values, right, it's probably not too dissimilar in a lot of ways, but you have to be able to speak to their values, you have to understand their values.
Totally.
And that's where they might differ a little bit from other voices and consumers in the marketplace. But anyways, I'm really excited about actually what millennials and young people generally, even people younger than them, I look at my own children and their sense of democracy, their sense of the truth, which is their voice matters just as much as mine does, right? I didn't grow up in a generation where I felt like my voice mattered as much as my parents, right? We learned really quickly not to be the squeaky wheel because it didn't make much difference, right? Not true for our children now. But anyways, oh gosh, there's so much we could talk about
Oh,
there.
that would be a long conversation on
Yes.
child rearing, and
Yes, you've had your
yeah,
own journey with that, right? You've got some brilliant kids that are
their
phasing into,
university. Yeah.
yeah, new, parts of their life that are really exciting. So I think you've got a gift for our listeners, which is really fascinating to me that you would offer this up, because people would be crazy not to take you up on it. But let's talk about that. And I've got some other final questions for you.
Sure. As a guest of or a listener of Heather's podcast, and I'm launching my new podcast, and in ways relaunching my coaching business. I would entertain, say, I'll leave it up to 10 people, because the number of people that will listen and forward this on might be infinite. But I'm going to say for 10 people, I will do a free consultation. For now, you need to be specific. It would be healthcare practitioner, chiropractor, alternative healthcare practitioner, because that's really where my focus is. I mean, I'm very good at business in many ways, but I'm not an expert in launching your online tech business or
Right.
other businesses like that. So that would be basically a 15-minute to 30-minute chat about whether we resonate and whether I can help you. Either way, you would get out of it the some sense of direction on where to go. And that's what I would want to add value to those who take advantage of that. And I'm not sure how which platform you chose to for them to contact me, for
Yeah,
listeners to
absolutely.
contact me.
Well, so for anybody listening, if you want to get in touch with Alan, if you want to reach out to him, Alan, I will put all of your links, including any information that you want me to have about how people can reach out to you, on my show notes page. So for listeners, you should visit
Perfect.
legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. We'll have all of Alan's information there. But if you are in the chiropractor or alternative health world, I highly recommend you take Alan up on his offer for a chat, because he's built, I mean, you've had a practice with multiple locations at times, I mean, built up to really phenomenal levels of business, and you understand very deeply the world that you're in.
Certainly do.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know it all, but certainly I'm
no,
still learning, and
right? Aren't we
that's why I'm a
all?
good coach.
Yes, I love that. Um, so what else would you want to talk about? I mean, for people that are listening, especially people in the healthcare world, maybe we bring it up to current, right? So COVID is happening. People are having to figure out new ways to be, and new ways to practice, and new ways to probably find and attract people. What do you have any thoughts, even based on your own experience right
I
now?
love that question, and I do have an important sentiment to share. And this time has not been easy for any of us.
Yeah.
What it's done for me and many others that and I'm a very good observer. I observe a lot of details and try to glean insight for my own life. And that is the shift from what was business as usual to a much more sensitive, and this is just a general statement, and I think this is the wave of success, that businesses that are sensitive to other people will do far better. In other words, reaching down to the heart, being more accommodating, listening and reacting appropriately, as opposed to these are the rules, you must follow the rules. And there's always exceptions to the rules, but we do have rules also in place to help society and businesses function better. So if anything, I would say that to be creative, in your solutions and be flexible, yet still be compliant, so that we can all get out of this this mess, if you will. And we are in this together. Very early on, I started posting with the hashtag "We're in this together," and
Mm-hmm.
as we continue to get out of this together, I think, do you get a sense of that, Heather? There's a sense of greater humanity coming out in some circles, more circles than not now. The greater sense of caring and humanity. Certainly, it's been a feeling that I felt. It's made me be more introspective, of being more real with my patients and clients, as opposed to, I'm the doctor and this is what you do, and see you later,
Yeah.
see you in 2 weeks or whatever.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think everybody has the opportunity right now to be more real in a variety of ways. I mean, even in showing up on a Facebook Live, right? I often warn people, like you saw multiple times, kids can come charging through the door. Like, this is real life right now.
Totally.
And also, I think the way we enter into conversations, we have the opportunity to go much deeper and really truly connect with people on how are they doing and what do they need and what's going on in their life, because the weight of it is, can be pretty heavy, and not everybody's there. I will say it's kind of painful to watch people who are going about life as normal and not making changes in the face of what, we're all dealing with. But I think certainly a lot of people have become more aware and more compassionate. And to your point that I love about, if you can be more sensitive in your business and be more relational, right? I think about a conversation I actually just had with a gentleman yesterday, or maybe the day before, about the businesses who are doing well right now versus those who are really severely struggling. The
Right.
ones who are really severely struggling, guess what? They're the ones who are trying to do business as usual, who are not socially conscious, who don't have zero waste programs going on. For businesses who are ahead of the curve, who are socially conscious, have built in diversity, have created businesses and platforms that embrace the marketplace and embrace human reality, and also companies that are environmentally conscious, right? We talked specifically about
Totally.
companies that are environmentally conscious. They're doing better. They have a loyal
Right.
following. They have people that care about what they're doing. And that to me speaks volumes about how we create a loyal following in our business.
And the greatest motivation is to do that with a sincerity of
Right.
heart,
Right.
not as a marketing ploy, because those companies get called out pretty quickly when you're watching the back door and stuff is just being totally dumped out or
Totally.
whatever.
You're trying to whitewash something, greenwash it, whatever you call it, versus
Exactly.
really truly building it into your culture, the fabric of your business, how you show up in every way.
And I would say for me, that has been my evolution as a clinic owner, is to try to be creative for the right reasons. And that
Mm.
is we just celebrated our 25-year
Oh,
anniversary as the brand.
congratulations.
I've been in
Wow.
practice 33 years. Thank you. But as a brand, we celebrated 25 years. And
Yeah.
so part of that being real is to celebrate real things, right? Not marketing ploys necessarily. Celebrate real people, celebrate real events, as opposed to hiding them, or not acknowledging certain successes.
Yeah.
So the great online marketing uh, guru said to me, Christian Michelson, I said, well, you know, I'm not a $1 million business yet. How am I supposed to say I'm the $1 million coach or whatever? As I was thinking about branding or descriptives. Well, he said, how many millions have you made over the last 10 years? Oh, okay. Multi-millions, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is perspective. And someone as brilliant as Christian Michelson had in just a casual conversation said, did you realize this? And so often our own perspective is that we play down our successes.
Yeah.
And so those are genuine moments that we can capture. And I think the quick summary of that, Heather, is that to acknowledge the little things. And that's where I say creativity, bring more creativity into your business, and acknowledge, especially staff members that are great creative avenues and can do a lot to contribute to your business, even if it's that one other person or two other people, or if you run multiple employees or contractors, is to acknowledge that, and so they will do their best work certainly when they're acknowledged. That is one of the things I've also learned over the years of practice, is to acknowledge and to pay attention to those details and celebrate successes.
Well, I love that point, because I think, and it's one of the things I learned from one of my very favorite mentors early in my legal career. He was huge on celebrating wins, whatever size win. You know what I mean? It could have been something small. It could have been that he just loved the thing you wrote, a portion of a memo or a brief, or, I mean, there was a whole lawsuit that I was a part of where we defended, our client was sued for defamation, and she was a grassroots activist, and it was a really long, big story, but there were lots of opportunities for wins along the way. And that is truthfully a huge thing that's missing, not only in the legal world, but I think in life generally, and especially for high performers, is slowing
Totally.
down, stopping, acknowledging, whatever, however far you've come, the 10 steps from yesterday, or maybe the 1,000 steps from last year, and really pausing to celebrate, acknowledge other people in our life for that and for their part in it, and acknowledge ourselves. I love that as a point
Yeah.
to wrap up
And
on, I think.
and your summary, Heather, is a great testament to being human. We need to be more human these days, as
Mm,
opposed to be a business person.
right.
I'm in business. We have to be profitable. Yes, you have to be profitable to survive, but be human and express your humanity while you're doing it, and
Right.
contribute to humanity, because ultimately business is about helping others move forward in some way, whether it be getting what they want as a product or service, or feeling better, or any number of other things, feeding them, and let's remind ourselves that we're feeding both the mind, the body, if you will, and the soul. So
Mhm.
that's my holistic challenge, I guess. I'll leave you with that.
No, I love that. I think it's such a great point to end on. Well, Alan, I so appreciate our conversation. I can feel your heart. I can feel how much you care about people that you serve, whether through your chiropractic work or through your coaching, and especially the part about being human and being human first before being the business. So, thank you so much. I look forward to sharing this with my audience. If you're listening, please be sure to visit the show notes. Get to know more about Alan at legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Alan, congrats on your own podcast. If your podcast is live when this show goes live, this episode goes live, we will also share that link as well.
Awesome. Appreciate
Awesome.
that. Thank you
Thank
very much for
you.
having me.